Maybe you are trying to impress a Southern guy or your in laws or a Southern girl, or you just really enjoy Southern food and you don't know how to make it, or you just want to know what my opinion is. But here are my top three um, foods I guess you should master first in your quest to being the best Southern cook. It should come as no surprise to anyone that the first thing on my list is going to be homemade biscuits. They're super easy. People overcomplicate these things, but it's really just self rising flour, butter, and milk. Of course, I melt my butter before I ever get started and let it cool back down to room temperature. Then I pour the ice cold milk back on top of that. It makes little solid bits, and then I mix that in with my flour, and that essentially gives you the same effect as cutting up frozen butter into little bitty pieces without having to cut up butter into little bitty pieces. The ratio that seems to work the best for me is going to be 3 cups of self rising flour, 1 cup of milk, and 1 stick of butter. This recipe is pretty easy to cut into thirds, it's pretty easy to double, and it yields great results essentially every time as long as you just, follow some basic steps. People will tell you not to overwork your biscuit dough because it makes tough biscuits. If you're doing it by hand, it's going to be pretty difficult to overwork it. It does need to be worked some to release some glutens in the dough, and that'll help the biscuits rise and like look better and stuff. But I suppose if you went absolutely crazy, you could overwork it. Once the dough comes together, just roll it out on a floured surface about 3/4 of an inch thick, and then cut it out, put it on a greased baking sheet. You're going to bake these 12 to 15 minutes on a 450-degree oven, and then you're more than welcome to brush butter or an egg wash or something on them before you put them in, and that'll help them brown up a little bit. But it's super easy, they're super delicious, and they should be in everyone's arsenal. The next thing on the list is going to be cornbread, and it's so easy that a child could do it. Well, a child with adult supervision because, hot stuff and things. Speaking of, the absolute most important thing to not getting cornbread to stick is to make sure that you are pouring your batter into a hot cast iron skillet. It actually needs to fry just a little bit as the batter is hitting the skillet. So, what we do is while we're getting the ingredients mixed together, we preheat the oven and leave the skillet in while it's preheating. I use a cup and a half of hot rise cornmeal and a half a cup of self rising flour. This produces a much smoother cornbread than just an all cornmeal cornbread. And then there's 1 egg, a cup and a third of milk, and then a 1/4 cup of vegetable oil or a half a stick of melted butter or a big heaping tablespoon of mayonnaise. However that works, get you some fat in there. That's all it's about. Mix all your ingredients together in a separate bowl and pull your hot cast iron skillet out of the oven. Make sure it's greased. Of course, the essential oil choice of the South is going to be bacon grease, but you can use whatever you've got on hand. And again, it should sizzle when it hits the skillet. This is going to bake at 450 degrees for around 20 to 25 minutes. That cook time is going to depend on the size of skillet that you have. If it's a smaller skillet, it's going to take longer because it's going to be a thicker loaf of cornbread, pan of cornbread, whatever you want to call it. Make sure you don't mess up if you're trying to impress people. And lastly, if you're going to make it in the South, you've got to know how to fry some foods. This is just a chicken fried version of literally any meat that you want to chicken fry. And basically, what that means is you take your meat, you put it into seasoned flour, you run it through an egg wash, which is just, an egg that's all beat up and stuff, and then you run it back through more seasoned flour. And you're going to maybe ask, what seasoned flour? Well, it's flour that doesn't just taste like flour. A good starting point is going to be salt, pepper, and garlic powder. If you like it a little spicier, you can put some Cajun seasoning in it, or chili powder, paprika, whatever. Go nuts. You do need to taste the flour before you put raw meat in it, preferably. And if it tastes good, then more than likely the batter on your meat will taste good, believe it or not. And for those of you that thought 350 degrees was only the ideal temperature to cook things in the oven, well, that's also a pretty good oil temperature too. You could obviously deep fry these. It does take quite a bit more oil to do that. So we typically shallow fry here, which is just having enough oil to cover basically half of whatever you're frying and then flipping it over halfway through or multiple times until it's done. but it does produce a very nice crust this way. I mean, it's KFC on steroids, basically, because, fast food's absolutely trash. All kidding aside, this is a great way to prepare beef, like you see here. These are cube steaks, or chicken, or pork, or wild game. Anything that you would think of as fried. This is a great way to do it. It is just one step of frying, though. I do have plenty of videos on deep frying a bunch of other stuff, vegetables and Oreos and cookie dough and all kind of stuff. If you are interested in anything like that, or more in depth of anything that you saw here today, I've got plenty of playlists. You can check them out. And if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Give me a thumbs up, and share this with somebody that needs some help in the Southern Kitchen department. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope y'all enjoyed.